right, everyone. Hello and welcome to The Current, the North Central Region Water Network's Speed Networking webinar series. My name is Lisa Merrifield, and I'll be your moderator for today. I serve as chair of the North Central Region Water Network leadership team this year. For those of you who don't know us, the network is a 12-state extension-led network working group to advance stewardship and equitable access to clean and abundant water by facilitating interdisciplinary collaboration and by leveraging and sharing resources across land-grant institutions in the North Central region. Today, our webinar is focusing on resources to help our communities access some of the state and federal funding that's currently available for environmental infrastructure and economic development. A couple of housekeeping items. We're using a Zoom webinar today. If you have any audio issues, you can connect via your phone. Just click the up arrow on the mute icon and select the switch to phone audio option. We will be using the Q&A panel for our speakers today, and there will be a dedicated time for Q&A after all three presentations. The Q&A panel can be found at the bottom of your screen. Also, be sure to read the other questions submitted by other attendees, and you can upvote those that you think are most important. We'll take those that get the most votes first. There's also a chat feature in Zoom. Please use that feature for any technical difficulties or if you have any questions about the North Central Region Water Network, the current webinar series. Please do not use the chat feature for questions for our speakers, as we will be looking to the Q&A feature for that. All right, I think we're ready to start with our presentation. We have three great speakers today. So, and I'm not forwarding slides, am I? So here are our speakers for today. We have Bonnie Keeler, Davina Resto, and Rachel Young. So we'll start with Bonnie. Bonnie is an associate professor at the University of Minnesota Humphrey School of Public Affairs, and she will be talking about the federal landscape in general, technical assistance for remote, rural, and disadvantaged communities, and introduce the Great Lakes Thriving Community Technical Assistance Center. Bonnie, I will stop sharing my screen and turn it over to you.
Conference room closet at the Environmental Protection Agency in DC following a meeting that I just had here. So I'm going to ask the moderators if you could share my slides for me, and I'll just sit next slide just so that I don't use any extra bandwidth than I need to here.
That sounds
so whenever good. You can get those.
All right, can you see that? Uh-oh, did we lose Bonnie? Martha, can you see, did we lose Bonnie? Oh, there's Bonnie again. All right, can you see your slides, Bonnie?
I can see the slides. Thank you so much. Okay, great. So thanks, everyone. Apologies for the technical difficulties here, but I am Bonnie Keeler, and I'm both a faculty member at the University of Minnesota Humphrey School, but also the lead of one of these environmental justice thriving communities technical assistance centers for EPA Region 5. So my goal here is to introduce you to these, what the colloquially are called Tic Tacs, to tell you about some of the work that's happening through these technical assistance centers, some of the federal context that they situate within, and then how you can access these types of really valuable services that are getting spun up in regions across the country. Next slide. So many of you are probably aware of the really amazing federal investments that have been made in infrastructure policy and climate policy, and really the sort of unprecedented amount of funding and investment that's being made in the US right now to advance climate, clean energy, water, and key sources of public infrastructure. And so two important pieces is the bipartisan infrastructure law. This includes billions of dollars for Superfund project, for brownfield cleanup, for safe and clean water, actually $50 billion, the single largest investment in water ever in the US. Upgrades in our grid infrastructure, upgrades to resilient infrastructure to help communities combat threats of climate change and other types of threats, and also to tackle legacy pollution and objectives to advance environmental justice. Next slide. In addition to the bipartisan infrastructure law, there's also the Inflation Reduction Act, which is the single largest investment in climate policy in US history. And some have said it's the single largest investment in climate policy in any country globally ever. Billions of dollars in climate and energy investments. These are coming through in the form of tax incentives and grant programs and loan guarantees. They're everything from credits for clean hydrogen, for developing new renewable sources of energy in communities, for literally leveraging and incentivizing private capital investments in clean energy projects, investments in rural co-ops, investments to help farmers and small businesses invest in clean energy projects, a whole host of projects that you can sort of see up here that relate to pretty much every aspect of the economy. And so for folks on this call, you'll be interested in some of the energy, environmental justice, and also the climate smart agriculture programs. And a lot of these are targeted towards rural communities and invest in things that many of you are already familiar with, potentially like EQIP, or the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, Conservation Steward Program, the Conservation Easements Program. These have all really been supercharged by the Inflation Reduction Act. So many more dollars spinning up for these programs, in addition to new programs that agencies are launching right now across lots of different domains that touch on energy, conservation, environmental quality, and water. Next slide. So then important sort of federal context in addition to that is to recognize that this is all being done under the umbrella of the Justice 40 initiative, which is another signature initiative of the Biden administration that seeks to make sure that federal investments flow to disadvantaged communities. So there's a whole of government requirement or to make sure that 40% of the overall benefits of programs related to climate, clean energy, water are flowing to disadvantaged communities. Now, of course, in order to actually make good on that progress, we have to do things a little bit differently than we've been doing in the past if we want this money to actually flow to those disadvantaged communities. Next slide. So one of the signature programs that is being spun up in response to this need, the fact that we have the situation where we have these unprecedented level of federal dollars on the table, tons of new programs, lots of money available that hasn't been available before. But unless we do the business of government a little bit different, that money is just going to flow to the same actors that have the resources and able to pull these complicated and bureaucratic grants together. And so the EPA and the Department of Energy have stood up these things called TICTACs, or technical assistance centers, that are designed to really break down barriers that disadvantaged, remote, and rural communities face in trying to access these federal programs. There are 17 of these nationally. There are 2 in EPA Region 5. And so you can see on this map, the little stars represent location of land-grant institutions throughout the 6 states represented in EPA Region 5. And our network includes the extension offices in each of those different states, in addition to a host of other partners, including the Environmental Protection Network, who you'll hear from next, the Community Engineering Corps, the Great Plains Institute, and the Midwest Tribal Energy Resources Association. We, as a coalition, we have a responsibility to serve this entire region. You can see that this includes both all of the federally designated tribal nations, the 6 states that represent this area, and our particular focus is on federally designated disadvantaged communities, and that's based on the Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool developed by the Council on Environmental Quality, as well as rural and remote communities. There is a second technical assistance center in Region 5 that is led by Blacks in Green, and they're a Chicago-based environmental justice and community advocacy organization that represents a coalition of advocacy organizations across this region that will also be providing technical assistance to communities in EPA Region 5. Next slide. Some of the services that these TIC-TACs will provide include capacity building. So you don't have to have a well thought out idea of exactly what you want to do in your community. Our goal is to meet people wherever they are. And if they just need to build some capacity to start to explore the options that might be available for them related to energy, environment, water, infrastructure projects, then we're going to help provide that capacity and build it for the long term. We're providing grant navigation services. So this list of federal grants and federal programs is pretty overwhelming. There's so many programs. Each one has its own specific requirements. We're going to help folks navigate that landscape and really identify which of these grant opportunities are best for them. We're also providing translation and interpretation services for communities. We have a full-time grants navigator who will provide budget and help identify cost share opportunities, either with private sector organizations, with state level actors, green banks. There's a whole bunch of these new types of financial instruments that are being stood up. We're able to provide environmental justice analyses using spatial data, creating maps to help communities develop the statistics that will make for a compelling proposal, assist in grant writing, post-award management, and the evaluation and reporting. Next slide. There are, as I mentioned, a ton of technical assistance resources that are available if you want to kind of get started at thinking about all of the different ways in which you can learn about the kinds of grant opportunities that are available through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act. And so what I've linked here are just 2 fact sheets and then associated technical assistance guides that are available through the federal government that you can sort of access right now, that are a compilation of a lot of the resources that are available. So it's a great place to start if you're just trying to get a lay of the land, and a place where you could take this research to your TIC-TAC and say, I've looked at these guidebooks and I have some thoughts about the kinds of programs that I might want to apply for, or that my community might want to apply for. Next slide. So when will our assistance be available? We are hiring full-time staff. We are getting things ramped up and really starting to invest in these supports right now. So it's not too soon to reach out. Over this fall, we'll be building out our team, and the plan is to provide this kind of technical assistance for the next 5 years. As I mentioned, it's a whole bunch of different services that we're building out support to do, including grants navigations and budgets, engineering support, legal support, project design and development. And our focus is to support applicants who have traditionally not had the resources to apply for federal grants. So we're particularly interested in working with communities or municipalities that have not been recipients of federal funding in the past. And to remind folks that this is a really key strategy of the Justice 40 initiative. So we're prioritizing our support to federally designated disadvantaged communities, and also to communities that are designated as remote and rural, or communities that are located on current or former minelands. These are all target high priority communities for the Biden administration for a lot of the grants and funding opportunities that are available. And so we're going to be targeting our assistance to communities that meet these types of criteria. Next slide. So then in terms of getting in touch with us, here's a link to our website, the Great Lakes TICTAC.umn.edu. You can access information about our program, the kinds of services we provide, and links to the partner organizations. And we'll be building out this resource over the next months and years. Next slide. And then finally, I just encourage folks to sign up for our newsletter. So this form is available on our website. And this is a place where you'll be able to receive future correspondence from the TIC-TAC, upcoming grant opportunities, information about how to access technical assistance, information about how to get in touch with this network that we really hope folks will take full advantage of over the next 5 years. So please sign up for our newsletter, and please get in touch, because we really want to hear from people about where this network can be most helpful for you. And I believe that that is my last slide. So thanks, everyone. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Bonnie. Put up information for the next speaker. All right. Next up, we have Davina Resto. And Davina is a senior community outreach associate with the Environmental Protection Network. And she's going to talk to us today about their pro bono technical assistance for capacity building. Davina, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Let me start sharing my screen. And then let's start from the beginning. Great. Okay, can you see my slides okay? Great. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Bonnie, for your presentation. I'm so happy to be here to talk a little bit more about EPN, our network, and how we are just assisting communities across the nation in such a pivotal time. So first, I'll introduce myself. As Lisa said, my name is Davina. I'm a Senior Outreach Associate with EPN within our Pro Bono Technical Assistance Program. I was formerly our designated outreach associate for the Midwest region. I no longer work in that capacity, but oversee the team that does. So I'm happy to be here and to connect you with our team after this. And I'll share more about those emails after. So EPN, the Environmental Protection Network, we are a 501c3 nonprofit. We started in 2017, formally as a response to the Trump administration at the time, just kind of the goal was to protect the integrity of the EPA during, a time when the agency was kind of seeing a little bit of turmoil and a little bit of gutting inside the agency. So EPN was born and they were able to gather over 500 EPA alumni, so retirees, folks who were no longer working at EPA, to provide their time to protect the integrity of the EPA. And though then they kind of started to see a switch in the work that they were doing and where they were and where the volunteers were dedicating their time. And in 2021, when the new administration came in, they saw a real shift in where they needed to put the volunteers. And that's when they started the Pro Bono Technical Assistance Program. So it started in 2021. And so what we do now is we connect this vast network of volunteer experts to frontline communities, underserved communities, folks who have just been constantly, unfortunately, running into barriers constantly with trying to access federal funding. Excuse me. So the point of our pro bono program is, again, to build capacity within communities that usually have these barriers that with accessing these types of federal resources. So it looks like many different things. It can look like translating a document, helping grant support, and numerous other things that I'll list in a second. But our goal is to really just bridge that divide between communities and governments and federal bureaucracies. So the types of assistance that we provide, again, it ranges from a number of different things. When we first started the program in 2021, the goal and kind of the theme of the things that we worked on were EPA-focused subject matters, right? So communities would come to us with questions about Superfund sites in their communities, or they would come to us about petrochemical facilities in their communities that they had questions about, or if a community was seeing flooding in their basement all of a sudden and didn't know where to go or what to do, we would help them build that capacity and help them build those resources to answer those kinds of questions. And then lately, in the past, I would say year or so, it's expanded to cover a number of other umbrella items. So focusing on clean energy, energy transition, energy justice, climate justice, and getting our experts from those different types of areas to be able to connect them with those frontline communities. So even though we were focusing on EPA items, now we are focusing on groups who are looking for funding for microgrids, folks who are looking for questions on how to build a solar microgrid in their communities, or how to do electric electrification in their community, because it's a rural community, right? We've assisted a community in Illinois who were seeing the community so sorry, is Pembroke Township in Illinois, and They were starting a program with DOE to upgrade a lot of homes and electrify them. So assisting them with that kind of technical assistance, where can we provide those kinds of experts? So it really ranges from a lot of things, but I will say that a lot of our focus at the moment has been on grant support. As Bonnie said earlier in her presentation, it's just a historical moment right now for funding and for groups to access this funding. So EPN's mission and one of our goals at the moment is, how do we get this funding in front of the groups who it was meant for, and how do we make it easy to access, right? How do we remove these barriers that have hindered groups from being able to access this funding for so long? Again, so yes, just again, a once in a lifetime opportunity where EPN just sees a moment for us to play a significant role in making sure that this funding is getting tunneled in the right way. As Bonnie was saying and talking about, the Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Centers is going to be a really, really pivotal way for communities to be able to access this funding in a significant way. The Environmental Protection Network is luckily a partner on 10 of those centers. Of a majority of those, it's all pro bono work that we're doing and providing. It's just a space that we felt like we could help greatly, because we were providing technical assistance for the last few years to these communities. So we really felt it was important to be as involved as possible with these technical assistance centers. So we've been providing direct support to a lot of these centers. As Bonnie mentioned, we're a partner with the TICTAC here in Region 5. There's 2 TICTACs here in Region 5, which is amazing. You've got the Blacks and Green who are leading the other one. And then there's a whole bunch also nationally. So there's one in Region, I'm so sorry. I'm gonna get them confused. I don't believe there's one, I think there's a one in Region 7, but there's also one in yes, there's the Wichita State, the Heartland Environmental Justice Center. So Region 7 states, I don't know which states are present here, but you have the Heartland Environmental Justice Center, which just launched maybe a month ago, who are now accepting technical assistance technical assistance requests. So that's out of Wichita State for states who are in Region 7. And then you have I'm trying to think about the regions. We work in EPA regions, the EPA regions that cover this area, but they are putting out a new competition for a Region 8 Technical Assistance Center. So you'll have one in the Region 8 coming soon. These places are going to be really, really significant in getting access to this funding. So some really substantial ways that we've been really helping groups, I want to just highlight. I want to check time also, just to make sure I'm not running over. But so some of these have just, their deadlines have just finished this week. But these are some of the biggest grants that EPN has been assisting on. So it's the Solar for All, which is due tomorrow, that we've been helping a lot of municipalities and states with their applications. And so for that, I'm gonna hop out of my presentation and just show you this screen. Hopefully you can still see this screen as I'm hopping around, but we build out guides for these applications or these RFPs that we think are going to be significant or going to be a heavy load for communities. So we build out these guides. This is our Solar for All guide right here. It's a 6-step guide where we also not only take you into the process of going through the application, but we also build out templates to help you with this. So we've built out a program narrative template that you can use and take and build out your Solar for All application. There's resources that EPA gave with this RFP that we've just taken and kind of made a little bit better and a little bit stronger and put on this checklist as well. So things like this was really how we saw a way for us to fill those gaps in helping communities. And again, on this presentation, you saw as well that we're helping communities with this Rural and Remote Areas Program grant, which also just finished this week. So I feel like I'm getting this presentation a little out of timing for some groups, but as funding comes out and as our opportunities come out, these are the type of things that we'll be doing. So building out processes for groups, building out templates, building out resources, building out MOU templates, building out letter of support templates. What is it that the communities are going to need that are going to help them access this funding more accessibly? So yes, the DOE energy improvements in rural remote. the climate CPRG right now is one of the biggest things that we are also getting our hands in. We've been working for me personally, my work focuses on helping tribes, helping tribal governments access funding. So we've been working with EPA to really get technical assistance in front of tribal groups who are accessing CPRG. So building out their PCAPs and their CCAPs, their climate action plans, their CLOPs and all of those types of resources. But while also building that out, we also know that we can build those resources for municipalities and communities who are also applying for the CPRG implementation grants. So we have volunteers who are providing expert review on CLOPs, who are helping build out community PCAPs and CCAPs and all of those kinds of things. So those are major ways that we're really just trying to step up and be a resource. And then simply, let me go back and get into presenter view. I'm so sorry. And then something as simple as getting on SAM.gov and grants.gov. A lot of these frontline communities, SAM.gov can be a heavy lift and a heavy burden sometimes. And that's really that's the first step you need to do with accessing federal grants. So hosting office hours, this is something that is open to any community to just come in, sit with EPN, and let's figure out how to get you registered on SAM.gov. If you're already registered and you're running into some issues, how can we help you and troubleshoot? So that's another way that we've been assisting communities. And so I just wanted to show you really quickly a map before I run out of a little time here. These are our associates and how we work nationally. As you can see, we have different associates for regions 5, 7, and 8. So depending on where you are in the states, you would just connect with the proper associate. On our website, there's this map which has like the emails to the direct contacts, but you can also just get my information that I'll share at the end of this slide. And if you email me directly, then we will make sure that it gets to the proper associate. But again, we work regionally, and that's really to ensure that we're helping the most proactive and the most efficiently to get into communities. So this is my email. I'll leave it up here for a second. Please feel free. This is my phone number. I'm available 9 to 5 EST time. I'm based in Brooklyn, New York, but all of the associates where you saw again on the map are located where they are. So in California, they're based in California. So just think about that when you're thinking about time zones and reaching out to them. But again, if you reach out to me directly, I'm happy to connect you to the proper associate and getting you pro bono technical assistance to help with your initiatives. So thank you so much for this time, and I'm going to stop sharing now.
Thank you so much, Davina. And our final speaker today is Rachel Young. Rachel is the Director of Grant Making at the Just Transition Fund. And her presentation will be on helping coal-impacted communities access federal funding for economic development. And I also want to remind you that if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we will get to those, or put them in the Q&A. My apologies. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A and we will moderate our discussion after Rachel's presentation through those questions in the Q&A. Rachel, I will turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Lisa, and to the Current for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm just going to pull up my slides. How's that? Can you see?
That looks good, thank you.
Great. So again, my name is Rachel Young. I'm with the Just Transition Fund, and I'll just start by kind of telling you a big picture about the work that we do. I'm going to hit on some very similar topics and themes from the last two presentations. And so it's such a honor to be part of this panel. And our work, we bring I think a slightly different lens because we're focused specifically on the impacts of the decline of the coal industry on rural communities across the country and helping those communities access federal funding for economic diversification. I know there's such a nexus of economic development and energy and water. And so appreciate, Lisa, the opportunity to kind of bring our perspective into this conversation, because I think the work that we're doing is so complementary of much of what we heard in the last two presentations. So with that, The Just Transition Fund is an organization, we're a hybrid organization where we fundraise and we re-grant. So we're a grant-making intermediary. We support economic diversification in communities across the country that are harmed by the decline of the coal industry. So when coal plants or coal mines close and create significant economic distress, we support initiatives to help grow and diversify local economies in ways that are equitable, inclusive, and low carbon. We actually got our start during the Obama administration when that administration created the Power Initiative, what's known as the Power Initiative through the Appalachian Regional Commission. And that was the first time that federal funding had ever been made available specifically for coal communities in economic transition. And so our co-founders saw a real need and opportunity for philanthropy to play a role in ensuring that that money really got to the ground, got to the communities that were most impacted, that were really leading kind of bottom-up inclusive community economic development work, but didn't necessarily have the resources or the capacity to overcome all the barriers that we all know exist to accessing those resources. And as Bonnie spoke to, knew that those resources would really just flow to kind of business as usual economic development initiatives without that sort of targeted intervention. And so that's what we got our start to do many years ago. And over the last couple of years, with the influx of new federal funding available under the Biden administration, we sort of rebranded that work that we've been doing for a long time and really scaled it up and launched what we call our Federal Access Center. So that's what I'm here to speak with you about, the grants and technical assistance that we offer. In addition to our access work, we also do advocacy work to ensure that the experiences and expertise of coal communities are really centered in state and federal policy as it relates to transition. And then we also convene regularly, and we have our big annual convening next week. And so thank you for your grace if I appear at all frenzied by all the last minute planning that goes into that kind of an event. So where we work across the country. The problem of coal transition is, I think, much bigger than folks often may think who are not in the space. But there are 372 counties across the country that are home to a coal mine, a coal plant, or both, which is almost every state in the country. We and most of these communities are rural and just, again, experience such severe economic distress when the coal plant or the mine closes both with respect to direct job loss, but also tax-based impacts. We prioritize the communities that are really the hardest hit by this problem. So we've done an analysis that looks at the places that are experiencing the most economic distress and that are home to the most marginalized populations, and those are the places that we prioritize in the work that we do. This map shows the communities across the 12-state region that I know the Current works in. Don't worry about the color coding, but again, these are counties where there's a coal mine, a coal plant, or both. We also work in adjacent counties as well, so this is not meant to be sort of limiting, but I just wanted to give folks a sense of the kind of the places where we work. And I should also say that we're in the process of really expanding our work with the launch of our Federal Access Center. We are really ramping up our efforts to work in more coal-impacted counties across the country. So really appreciate this opportunity to connect with folks on this call. I want to speak quickly to our framework for economic transition. So when we talk about federal funding for what? So we bring an approach that looks at really asset-based community economic development, really looking at what are the assets of a place, what is a community's vision for the new next economy beyond coal, and how can that community really diversify its local economy, again, in ways that are equitable, inclusive, and low carbon. We help support projects focused on economic diversification across a range of sectors, including clean energy, sustainable agriculture, outdoor tourism, mine land reclamation, and the list goes on. But economic diversification is really what we're focused on. workforce development to help create job opportunities in those sectors, and then infrastructure with a focus specifically on broadband, knowing what a challenge that is in rural communities and what a fundamental non-starter it is for economic development. So I will not spend time on this slide because we've already, I think, addressed what the myriad barriers that exist to kind of chronically disinvested communities being able to access federal funding. But that is certainly a really key premise for our work. And the reason why we launched, again, our Federal Access Center, which is our resource hub that provides both grants and technical assistance to help overcome those barriers. So I'll speak now to specifically what those services are. We have two key forms of support that we offer. One is called application ready support, which is designed for those communities, and also so nonprofit organizations and local governments are both eligible. And this form of support is designed for those communities that have a project developed, have a federal funding opportunity identified, but they need match, which we know is such a huge obstacle often for rural communities that lack access to those dollars, and also funding for things like grant writers or other forms of consultant expertise, also just staff capacity, any kind of convening needs. I mean, it's very flexible in terms of what that grant funding can be for, but at any of the range of costs associated with developing a strong federal application, we provide grants of up to $100,000 to support those needs. We also provide technical assistance to complement that funding, to help with navigation, federal navigation, to help with proposal review, things like that. And then in addition to our, one more thing about our application ready support, it's very rapid response, and we make these grants on a rolling basis. So we know these federal deadlines come and go, and our grants are designed to be very responsive to those opportunities as they come up, and we can turn around decisions pretty quickly. So that's application ready. As I think Bonnie also spoke to, we also recognize that that's not where all communities are. We want to meet communities where they're at in terms of their sort of readiness to apply for and manage federal funding, which often communities are at earlier stages when it comes to developing a project and kind of building that organizational capacity. And so we also provide what we call early stage support to help with that kind of front end capacity building and project development. That grant support is made in a more cyclical way. So we just are in the midst of what we're calling our Coal Communities Get Ready Challenge, which is a grant making opportunity through which we will identify a cohort of 10 communities across the country that are developing projects to diversify their local economies. And so that is closed for the moment. And that was a pilot. We're really excited next year and beyond to launch other programming focused on these early stage capacity building needs. So more to come there. And then the third kind of piece of our Federal Access Center is the work that we do directly with federal agencies. We have close relationships with a lot of the federal agencies that do work in coal impacted communities. And so we do a lot of work to both coordinate with them and then also to share feedback, the feedback that we're hearing from our community partners on the ground about their experience applying for these federal programs and the barriers that they're facing. We're doing work to kind of collect and synthesize those findings and share them back with the federal agencies with the goal, of course, of improving how those dollars flow in the future. So I wanted to just provide a couple of examples of what this looks like to make it a little bit more tangible. So we have worked with an organization in Indiana called Thrive West Central, which was successful in securing funding through the Economic Development Administration for a revolving loan fund that they created to help small businesses that have barriers to receiving traditional financing, often BIPOC owned or women owned. And so we provided matching funds and they were able to secure this $1 million grant from the EDA. So that was very exciting. Two other projects I'll highlight are are in process. So they're in the process of developing and submitting applications, but one is an organization, a workforce development organization in Illinois that is applying for the EDA's Recompete pilot program, which is a big new program, pilot program focused on workforce development in rural and distressed and disadvantaged communities. And so we provided funding recently to help them hire a grant writer to apply to that program. And then thirdly, and maybe most relevant to this network, we are also working with a coalition in the Great Lakes region called Great Lakes Renew. They're a finalist for the National Science Foundation's Regional Innovation Engines program. And we provided some funding to support the many costs associated with the site visit. And this is an initiative to develop a blue economy across the region and turn wastewater into an asset. So how it works, so you can see on the left our eligibility, 501c3 or local government located in a coal-impacted community, which we define at the county level. We have a list of all counties in all states that are eligible. So please feel free to reach out to me to talk about that. And again, we also look at adjacent counties that are impacted. Focused on projects for economic development, workforce, or broadband infrastructure, and planning to apply for federal funding. And so we have a very quick 1-minute form on our website to provide some of this basic information so that we can just do a quick screen and make sure that you're in the right place. If necessary, we may jump on a quick call to talk something through or clarify any details. Then we, if it's an application ready project, we send you our streamlined application form. And again, once we receive that application, we turn around decisions within usually 2-3 weeks, depending on how soon the need is to have that decision. But those are quick turnaround. And then if the need is for early stage capacity building support, as I said, we are planning to launch new programming to address early stage needs next year, but we really welcome and encourage you to reach out so that we can be sure to kind of design our programming in response to the needs that we're hearing about on the ground. And I think that's about it. Here I've also just listed some key federal programs that we are focused on that have deadlines upcoming. We have helped in our years of existence. We've helped coal communities access. I think that number is at about over 400 million now in federal funding, and so we're really proud of our track record and really excited about all the opportunity to continue to leverage greater levels of investment in coal-impacted communities. We'll circulate these slides, but here are QR codes to help find that form that I mentioned, as well as a one-pager about our Federal Access Center, so that's easy to access. And here is my info, and I really welcome and encourage you to reach out, and I'll leave it there. But again, really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Thanks so much, Rachel. This was all really, really helpful. Let me put up email addresses so that you can find those easily. And then we have a couple of questions. I encourage you to go through the Q&A. Bonnie has answered a lot of these. So if we have time, we'll kind of go over that. But the one thing I wanted to bring up for our panelists is a question about state revolving loan fund programs. Do any of your organizations work with those, or do you have a sense of how those programs could play a role in helping small communities either access some of this federal funding or just build out infrastructure? Davina or Rachel, do you work with state revolving loan programs?
No, EPN doesn't necessarily, but we connect. I'm more than happy to connect with you to a group that can help you with that question. They're called, I'm not sure if you're aware, Lawyers for Good Government. They've just been doing a lot of like, I guess, workshopping and webinar series and building resources around this kind of question. So happy to connect you, but EPN does not directly do anything in this area.
Okay. All right, well, let me do a plug for the North Central Region Water Network in this area. We have recently partnered with an organization called Quantify that is interested in helping rural communities access state revolving loan programs and funding to do some of these infrastructure projects. And we have a small team that is thinking about how we set up probably a mini grant program to help communities access, help build the capacity so that you're even ready, or help communities make sure they're set up appropriately and connected with the right, groups and facilities, so that the projects will score high enough to be funded. So that is just starting, but while we're doing it out of a North Central Region office network, Quantify works nationwide. So I think as we go forward, you'll certainly, if you're on the North Central Region Water Network email list, we will share information as we have information. We're probably a year out from having a mini grant program, but we will be looking for communities who are interested and willing to be a little bit innovative about how they approach those kind of funding opportunities at the state level. So there's my North Central Region Water Network plug. I don't see any other questions, but let's just go through, some of what Bonnie had said if you haven't had a chance to look at it. So Bonnie talked about the Tic Tacs, and there are Tic Tacs in every state in the country. Davina had the map for that. Any other comments about how to access Tic Tacs or the best way to access these kinds of resources? I think you guys covered it well. Okay. But yeah, so these resources are available anywhere. And then somebody, Ezra posted the link to the US EPA Tic Tac site, so that you can find the center. If you're not in EPA Region 5, if you're in one of the other EPA regions that cross the North Central Region Water Network region, you can find those folks. What else is in here? Bonnie also posted the link to it's called EJ Screen, which is how the US EPA designates underserved communities. There's a mapping system. Does anybody want to talk about the criteria that US EPA is using for the EJ Screen?
Sure. Hi, Lisa. It's Bonnie. So there's EJ Screen and there's the screening tool. So two different platforms. And in this case, the CJEST tool is what the federal agencies are using to identify disadvantaged communities. And it's a combination of some socioeconomic variables and then one or more presence of an environmental burden. And that varies. So it could be related to air quality or lead exposure or flood risk. And so the methods are spelled out on the Council of Environmental Quality website, that CJEST website. And you can really like zoom in and click on a county or click on a census tract, and pull up, and it'll tell you what are the socioeconomic variables and what are the burdens that particular community has. And so it's something that, if you're curious where those designations come from, those methods are there. And the justification for why one community is designated disadvantaged should be clear as you navigate that tool.
Excellent. Thanks, Bonnie, for that clarification. All right. I am not seeing any other questions, but there's still time to put anything in. The last thing I'd like to invite all of our panelists to talk about or give us some feedback on. Many of us are sitting in universities and extension offices and working directly on the ground with communities who are struggling to access some of these federal funds. And I just wonder if you could each give us some advice about what would help, what we can do to help make your jobs easier, or how, is there a spot that you can see, something that those of us sitting in this space between communities and these federal funding opportunities, something we might think about, or that would be helpful for us to know. Does that make sense? A long-winded question.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. I mean, happy to jump in. I mean, we appreciate all of the sort of outreach partners we can get. And so given the relationships that you have with so many communities, I would really welcome the opportunity to sort of be in touch as you identify communities that have needs that we're in a position to help address. You know, please introduce them, refer them, and we could even talk about how to kind of streamline some sort of a referral system. But we do this with some of the agencies that we work with and other partners, so that we're not just sort of random national organization kind of parachuting in. But I mean, we really, really want to kind of cultivate relationships with networks of organizations that are on the ground. And we do have staff in the region as well. It's not me, but so anyway, just anything we can do to work with you to get the word out about our services and any referrals that you might be able to offer, introductions you can make. I welcome that. Maybe that goes without saying, but I'll just take this opportunity to be really explicit about that ask.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. It is always good to know what resources are out there and to connect.
Yeah, I think very similarly to Rachel, I think EPN oftentimes struggles with connecting with rural communities and getting these resources to them. So we're happy to just, make partners that can help us make those more genuine connections more directly. We try to be less extractive with our outreach and try to be very holistic and and as genuine as possible. So building this relationship with the different extensions would be a really great place for us to start. So that way we can just start to then build the connection with the communities through that. So definitely something that we're very interested in as well. But just also, yeah, I don't know, like the capacity of like the extensions of the schools and how they work necessarily, but I think just one of the conversations that really come up with a lot of communities is just how can we get students more involved, graduate students more involved, universities, like you said that universities, some of the groups that you guys are working with are directly on the ground, but some of the groups that we've also worked with are also wondering just how to get these institutions also more on the ground. So I think also hearing what you guys are doing and how you are able to get those folks involved and sharing best practices with us will be really great. And yeah, how can we really get more students to get them connected, and make that relationship with communities that they're studying in and living in. So yeah, I think that is a big theme that we also are hearing with community-based orgs.
Sure. Thank you very much.
I'll just add a couple things to that. Those are great. I think, yes, please tell everyone about the TikToks. Tell everyone about the Just Transition Fund. Like, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, spread the word. And if you identify a community or a municipality that you think would benefit from these services, please encourage them to reach out and make that connection, because you know your communities, you know your region much better than we do. And the second is that you're going to be the best experts on the landscape of your state. So things that are state specific, state revolving funds, states are standing up green banks, states have their own network of really useful NGOs. So helping us be good connectors as TikToks that have more of a regional or national view to make sure that we're connected with the appropriate local actors in different places. So that we're expanding a network in a really strategic way, not just bouncing people around, but really understanding the local context, which is going to be really key in all of these places. And there's a lot of technical assistance providers now, and so so just helping us sort of get a sense of who's doing what and contributing to that network map that we're going to be building out about who's all working in this space, so that we're not being redundant in the services we're providing, but being really additive. That's another huge goal. And if you are in a state in EPA Region 5, know that through our TICTAC, your extension office is funded through this grant that we have. So if you're in one of the Region 5 states, those 6 states, your extension office does have funding, does have a designated contact. And so please reach out to them, make those connections if you're in extension.
All right, thanks, Bonnie. Kelsey asked about, will the slides be shared? And we will, the speakers, when the speakers give us permission, we will share the slides and the recording will be available. And then I wanted to mention, Kristen put a note in about an upcoming forum in Minnesota, Insights and Impact Forum, investing in Minnesota with the infrastructure, or with the Inflation Reduction Act. So that sounds like a great opportunity. With that, if there are no other questions, and I don't see any other in the chat, so I think we got them all. I want to give a big thanks to all of our presenters, Bonnie, Davina, and Rachel. Thank you so much for sharing the resources that are available. Again, this isn't an exhaustive list, but these are ones I know are out there, and we are all really trying to connect to make sure our communities have capacity and are grant ready and are able to really take advantage of the unprecedented resources that are available. So many thanks to all of you for joining. And do we have apologies? I want to also mention that our upcoming webinar is on soil health and microbiology on October 18th. So that is the next in the series if you are interested in that. And we will talk soon. Thanks so much.